Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this pale blue dot that we all live on. My name is Adam-Antium, you're the audience, and you're listening to AAUTZM Podcasts. Decided to, change things up a little bit here. You may hear some wildlife sounds around, because I decided to go out into nature to record this, because I didn't want to be stuck in the house today. It's a nice sunny Sunday afternoon, and, it's good to get some vitamin D. But anyway, I've got a good, jam-packed show lined up for you. I'd like to thank all of you for clicking in, as it were, to listen to this as well. I'm really appreciative of the audience I give, so I try to step it up each time with new things. I'm going to have some audio clips to play for you later on, and also a big chunk later on to just set the scene for the next coming podcast, which I'll get into in just a moment. But just the usual announcement for those of you listening to this on YouTube: my podcast also exists on talkshoe.com. That's talkshoe.com. If you look down below in the video description, you'll find the link to the call series, as it's called, and you can download the MP3s of this podcast, even though, as you can tell with this new format, that it's no longer in parts anymore. I mean, I did used to do the YouTube videos in bite-sized chunks, so that people could, either that were lacking in either time or attention span, that they could absorb the podcast in little chunks. But I've found that those hardly get watched, so I might as well just put it in one upload and just put that up, even if it's 2 hours long. Deal with it, guys, deal with it. But there you can download the MP3s of it. That way you don't have to sit through a whole YouTube video. So those who want to do that, you can do that there. It's all free of charge as well. I've been thinking about starting to get these up on iTunes at some point, because I've now got a hand-me-down iPhone, which I don't even have a SIM card in. I just use it to access the internet, because my parents are BT customers, so I'm able to access the hotspots wherever I'm near them. So that's cool. So yeah, mobile internet just with a hand-me-down iPhone. But yeah, I've tried to get round to doing the iTunes thing, so I'll see if I can get the podcast up there. Just the usual plug for those of you who want to know exactly what the Zeitgeist movement advocates. A long written form, like a collection of essays, because that's what this book is. It's basically a collection of essays. It's called The Zeitgeist Movement Defined. You can go find it at thezeitgeistmovement.com/orientation. I think that's still the link, and there you can find how to purchase a hard copy, or if you want it for free, you can download a PDF of it. Just to give you a very brief summation, the Zeitgeist movement really exists as a group of people that wish to move us into a sustainable paradigm by advocating the scientific method, the application of the scientific method to social and environmental concern, realizing that we can innovate our way out of our problems. So let's do that, even if it means outgrowing the monetary system, because we know that the monetary system's not sustainable. But we can get. But if you want to, that's it in a nutshell. And it's a chapter-based movement where there's sort of like different cells, as it were, across the place. There's hundreds of chapters in dozens of countries. So you find out where a chapter is near you. If there isn't one, go see if you can start one. But if you want to find out back to the usual plug, if you want to find out exactly what the movement advocates, go find the Zeitgeist Movement Defined. You can either buy it, at quite a good cost, I'd say. I mean, I bought my physical copy at a Z-Day event at London, and it cost me £5, and it's a dense book. It's a really dense book, and it's an awesome read. I'd recommend it for anyone who is familiar with the Zeitgeist movement and isn't familiar with the Zeitgeist movement, because it is the real I hate to use the word Bible, but it does extensively explain the train of thought. But there's that. Coming up very soon is going to be the London Z-Day event. It's going to be held out on Saturday the 25th of April. I think it's the event page says 11:30 to 5 p.m. BST. That's pretty standard time. But I've looked up the differential between that and Greenwich Mean Time, and it's apparently 1 hour. But I might be wrong there. I don't know. I think it's 11:30 to 4. I'm not entirely sure, but I've never heard of British Standard Time before. But yeah, if you want to find out about that sort of thing, go to zdayglobal.org. Z-Day, or otherwise known as Zeitgeist Day, it's a global sort of annual conference or symposium event where simultaneous or as near as possible simultaneous events worldwide around about the second week in March. That's generally when it is that we hold all these events to sort of give talks, play videos, have like symposiums of different sorts, just to advocate science and sustainability as applied to society. But the London event, because we couldn't get any venue for the second week in March, we're now having it 25th of April. It's going to be held at Conway Hall, same place as last year. But if you want to buy tickets, I think they're about £6.80. I bought mine, so you can more than pay for those. It's on Eventbrite, eventbrite.co.uk. Just look for London Z-Day 2015, Eventbrite, and you'll find that there. And you can get tickets for it, because the ticket prices are actually calculated so that we break even with the cost of the rental of the venue. We're not taking profit. But speaking of Z-Day, I'm going to be doing another feature. For those of you who listened to UK Collapse Radio back when I did that, you'll notice that I went round and interviewed quite a few people, both some of the speakers and some of the random members of the audience that were willing to answer a few questions, just done in a very guerrilla style format. I'm going to do that again for this Z-Day. So essentially, I'm giving myself 10 days to edit a whole video/audio feature for Z-Day, where I go around interviewing people, and I'll include maybe a few bits of some of the talks or something. But I need to completely solidify in my mind exactly what I'm going to do for that first. I've got all these different projects that I'm dealing with, and I'm wasting your time with going through them all. But just to let you know, next podcast is going to be special, and it's going to be the first podcast that I've done that is actually going to feature. It's not the first podcast that I've done where I've featured video, because back when I interviewed Tyson? Oh no, Tyson, I can't remember. But yeah, my mind's gone blank. But yeah, the guy who did Zeitgeist Live, I can't remember. Sorry. But yeah, back when I did the podcast with him, I integrated one of his dances into there, so that was pretty cool. But this will be the first podcast that I've done where I've integrated video of me, so it'll be the first time you'll see a moving picture of me, other than a still picture of me posing that I took sometime last year, and I've cut my hair since then. But for the reason why I cut my hair links into my next announcement, which is the Threshold film that I'm doing. Chapter 3 Threshold is the conclusion of the trilogy of short films that I've been doing. I've been making progress with the writing of the song for that. I'm soon going to be sending off to Sheena Bratt what she's going to need to be doing, and which she can improve upon as well, add her spin onto it. And once I've got that, I'm going to send that off to Racek. He's going to chop it all up and make it cooler, and make it epic, and send it back to me. I'll integrate that into the film. Then I'll have that film up. So I'm sorry to keep going on and on about this every single time, because I keep procrastinating. I keep letting other projects get in the way, like, for example, the Z-Day feature that I'm going to do. This is one of the things that I'm going to be talking about later on in the podcast. So there's that. Just for the onto the sponsorship situation, it's my unfortunate task to inform you that Chip Itch is now no longer our sponsor, since it was made bankrupt overnight by some unknown decision. Turns out the cream actually wasn't just your average antihistamine lotion made from the tears of Fox News presenters, supposedly. It was actually nanotechnologically designed to be absorbed through the dermal layers and towards the chip. After its functioning, going after the particular functions of it to alter its functioning and override it. Now, I hear that the black market got in on this stuff, so whether that's relevant, I'm not completely sure. But if I wind up fitted with cement shoes, then you'll know why. So long, guys. 'Twas fun. So this podcast is brought to you by Cochlear, dissolving the lyre through the cochlea, which is the part of the inner ear. Think about this. What if we could have a new means of actually getting politicians to tell the truth? For them to actually utter words as direct answers, as opposed to the answer the question you wish you would have been asked tactic that they're used to. How it works is that you place on the headset and you can intercept and co-opt the script that is being fed to the politician via an earpiece. Tests are soon to be conducted in the run-up to the elections, and we're actually looking for volunteers to help us conduct said experiments in conjunction with our own plants in the audience to ask the most important and relevant questions. For instance, what are the limits considered for economic growth? How can we justify the perpetuation of paid slavery when technology can free us from it? Those kind of questions. And the results are instantly public. Now, it would be there for all the world to see. Now, luckily, there are two security functions that come integrated as standard. The first resides in the headset, which actually scans your alpha waves to determine whether your intentions are for coaxing out the truth and nothing more. If the device isn't satisfied, it simply will not work. The second security function is that the politician themselves will not remember having said those precise words and thinks he gave the answer he normally would. Now, this enables us to tap him a few times before he has to be escorted off the stage, since they can't get through on his earpiece, But to the audience, it appears like he's had, some Howard Beale-style transformation and been escorted away as a traitor to the political cause. So, if you wish to find out more about this exciting new product, go to www.cochlear, and that's COCHLIAR.com/trials, and fill out the application form and submit that along with a certified psychological evaluation to receive one free of charge through the post. This podcast is also brought to you by my entrusted triad of sponsorship, providing the points of preservation that keep this podcast show afloat. And coming to you free every single month without fail. My triad consists of Russell Brand, Green Party MP Caroline Lucas, and Sir Patrick Stewart. They have all agreed to co-fund this podcast until they can each spare at least 10 minutes to come onto the show and talk with me about science and sustainability as applied to society. That being the ultimate fulfillment of their role, and they're free to go. Their role being filled by a new contributor. So, cheers, guys. So, ladies and gents, be sure to message, tweet, text, email, smoke signal, whatever you got to do to thank these individuals for sponsoring this show. The more we thank them, the more likely they will actually be to come on and talk to us. So, moving on to the multi-topics that the show is going to be dealing with. I thought I would actually start with the election farce, because I mean this whole situation with the election, it's touted out by the media as some huge momentous thing where we would actually gain some answers. I mean, there's this advert specifically for, I think it was for the ITV debates, and they've got some upbeat music coming on, and then there's different people at different points in the advert holding up these signs, like with particular questions on, or maybe some kind of statements, and it purports the whole thing as where these elections are where you will get those answers for them, when in fact you won't, because the whole idea of politics itself, it's just to perpetuate itself. It's not to solve problems, it's to perpetually service problems, because if you solve problems, then for one thing you eliminate the facility for profits, but I'll go into that later on. But the whole idea of politics as it's presented to the population is that it's presupposed as the only means of managing society, right? People only think about it in terms of who we vote for, and that is how we will actually change things. So as a result, if politics is presupposed, then it negates any consideration of alternatives. It's like, this is the way it's done, and we won't even mention any other way that it could be done. And even if we do, it will be in a hugely distorted context where we say, oh, this is where these people, this is how these kind of people live. It's really strange, isn't it? They don't have any shops. They don't even have any money. How do they get everything? That is how the mainstream media would present a resource-based economy. They say they don't have any money, they don't have any jobs, they don't have any shops. They've got computers running things for them. Because the thing is, the kind of thinking that's necessary to move us out of this current paradigm is the kind of thinking that we're not not that used to using, at least at this point in time. Though I dare say there were a lot of points back in our history, like hundreds of thousands of years ago, when we actually respected the, dare I say, majesty of nature itself. Because, the whole idea of permaculture is very much in line, I think, with the idea of just respecting your environment, using the land, but not exploiting, polluting, or destroying it. But maintaining an equilibrium, as it were. That sort of thinking is completely alien to people. So as a result, you have to make things scalable to mainstream dumbed down views and mainstream dumbed down thinking. You have to explain things in the context that they actually understand it, which is something that I'll go into later on. But it's easy to presuppose politics because we've got these people who are professional speakers, even if they don't have any particular qualifications in actual public speaking itself. As politicians, their job is to talk a lot. So they have gained a lot of experience in talking. So, they can be admired for their bravery to stand up in front of people and blatantly lie and be able to get away with it, know that they're getting away with it, and have people cheering because you're destroying their infrastructure. But because it's presupposed, because people know that they cannot trust what you say, they think, well, I've got to vote for you anyway, because this is how it is. And that's scary, you know. That really is scary, because it shows that there's no way that we can expect us to move forward if we're constantly caught in the trap of thinking that the way it is the way it always has to be. And the apathy that people, but I'll get into the apathy later on. But you know, we're like 20 minutes in. There's a lot I need to cover. But yeah, that's one of the things that the whole political situation, the whole debate sort of thing. There was no idea, there was no proposal, no advocation of anything outside of politics itself. There was nothing, no discussion of things transcending the need for politics. You know, it's presupposed. But one of the things I was just about to go into is the topics that are chosen for discussion are highly cherry-picked, and because there's only certain things that you can allow in discussion if you want to keep your audience dumbed down and led away from important issues, and even when you do kind of cover those issues, you have to taint them with other kinds of propaganda, just to make sure that people don't really get to the core of it. Like they say, we need to discuss the economy, right? But they don't discuss what it means to economize. They don't discuss what an actual economy would actually be. They don't discuss whether the current system even qualifies as an economic model, and it doesn't even discuss what can actually be done to have a true economy. No, what they discuss instead is their own sort of proposals, their own projections, false statistics, and criticisms of what other people, what other parties are doing, and where prior parties have failed. And thus, because they're saying where prior establishments have failed, they know that they're going to succeed because of that prior knowledge. No, not necessarily. You know, you can still have knowledge that there's a hole in the middle of the road that you walk down every day. You can know it, but unless you know where the fuck you're going to go to walk around it, then you're going to keep falling in it. It doesn't matter if you know it's there or not. The knowledge itself doesn't necessarily mean that the person is armed with the ability. Well, they are armed with the ability, in part to avoid it, but it won't necessarily mean they will. But yeah, it's the idea that they're presenting all. A lot of emotional appeals, and one of the things that has stopped me really from being engaged in politics is the fact that there's so much supposed need for knowledge of the history of particular incidents in politics, where there's different things that they've said, and different things, like individual politicians, different things they've said, different things that they've done, and there's so much, it's almost like there's a prior storyline there that you need to understand first in order to actually be considered to be any kind of authority on politics. That's one of the things, it's like a closed group of people that, where there's knowledge, and even if you acquire a good amount of knowledge, there's most likely going to be someone there who knows a little bit more than you, or at least sounds a little bit more certain in spouting some kind of bullshit that that contradicts what you've just said. Because that's what a lot of politics is about. It's about a gladiatorial, popularity contest. That's essentially what it is, with the supposed context that it's all for the betterment of society. When in fact it's all about keeping everything, controlled, as it were, to manage society. It's all about, the whole meaning of government is to govern, to control, to manage, to oversee, to supervise, to literally supervision means overseeing. Because we're duped into this whole animal farm mentality that we have to be controlled by people holding positions of authority. But I'll get into that another time. But the whole idea of the particular topics that are covered is divisive in of itself, because especially when people like UKIP are involved, the discussion turns to, what do we do about all these immigrants, So, the topics are tainted, and how the topics are decided upon is largely based on what is being spoken about in the media, and what the politicians themselves are actually talking about. They themselves, along with the media, establish the limits of debate. I think there was a thing that George Carlin said about this, that the limits of debate are firmly established beforehand, and we're given an illusion of choice. He said that if you want to vote, then you've got a choice ultimately between two pre-selected political candidates. But if you want a bagel, there's 40 different flavours. So it's really a dog and pony show that's purported as having some kind of relevance and discussing things that we think are actually important, when in fact they may not be, as I'll go into later on with my exploration of some of the UKIP stuff. But when it comes to the political debates, as I've been alluding to, the results of the debate, I don't know whether there was a vote tally or something at the events, but from what I heard, because I could not stomach watching the debate all the way through, because I tend to start ranting at the television, but it's amazing. It's almost like a pain body, I'll go into that later on, because I'll be talking about some of this psychological reaction stuff. But the results of the debates, as reported by the media, were not touted out as actual statistical data in regards of who answered the questions who gave the best answers objectively, but rather the media just shows what people thought of their own party's performance. It's like, both, because the reports were saying both Lib Dems and the Tories were claiming victory after last night's debate, but UKIP says that they made a few points as well. But it's like everyone in a political debate thinks that either they argued well or the party that they supported argued well. Of course they're going to fucking say that. But that doesn't tell us who actually presented their positions effectively and explain things, without evasion or use of logical fallacies, because it's all evasions and logical fallacies. As I mentioned earlier, one of the tactics that politicians are so used to using is, I think it's an NLP method. It's called answer the question you wish you would have been asked. So if someone asks you a question that's maybe a bit of a loaded question, I mean, this is something that activists can use while still maintaining integrity, right? If someone asks you a loaded question, as if to say, you know, so what's the difference between a resource-based economy and communism? Like, for example, what I was asked on the train when I had that impromptu Q&A session that I think it was the last podcast that I did. But I didn't answer the question, how is it different from communism? I actually asked the question that I wish I would have been asked, which was, you know, what is communism? And I had to respond with, well, I don't know. You're the one who's bringing up communism. Please tell me what you mean by communism. And they couldn't define the terms, you know. But I mean that aside, it's, you know, that when that tactic is used for when people are asking you direct questions about your own policies, which you are purporting to actually have some kind of merit and consideration and explanatory power, or have some sort of weight in reality of something that they can actually do to improve the standard of living for even a small amount of people, then even then they're going to dodge, because the questions that people are asking sometimes, and in my opinion not enough, is the really hard-hitting questions. Like, for example, how do you explain, you know, what consideration is there for the limits of economic growth? You know, you keep talking about growth, but we live on a finite planet, so please tell me what limits you're projecting for this growth before we can't grow anymore. You keep talking about growth, but is that because you're unaware that that there's a limit? You know, have you just not calculated a limit? But yeah, they use these kinds of tactics to avoid things, and because a lot of politicians use different rhetorical devices and logical fallacies and yada yada yada, people can't really, you know, people aren't really formally educated to recognise where logical fallacies come up, and they get hooked on buzzwords, and when those buzzwords are said, it's like, yeah, he's for the economy. What particularly is he doing with the economy? Well, he wants to help it out. Well, how? Well, I can't name anything off the bat, but you know, this is the mentality of voters that I'll go into later on. But there's no objective measure of who actually presented their, you know, in a Q&A format, I think, or in a sort of combative interrogation, as it were, which, you know, if you think about it, debates should be the most aggressive and you know, to the point way of essentially shaking a politician by the lapels and saying, give us a straight answer. You know, I mean, this is kind of what Jeremy Paxman does. You know, it does sort of like reveal how evasive a lot of politicians get, but it's still not getting the actual direct answers. It's not getting their real thoughts on why they keep perpetuating this system when it's clearly not sustainable. They would just say, well, I don't agree with that. Our policy is and they go on their own script. They answer the question that they wish they would have been asked. And people see this, they see this certainty because they're not bogged down with the difficult questions that they cannot answer, because they think that their evasive answer is going to satisfactorily address it. Then they're going to have a lot of certainty about that, and obviously certainty certainty is attractive to human beings. It gets our attention, and we're more likely to believe someone if they sound more certain, right? And we're less likely to believe someone if they're less certain. That's why the media love to, spread around all over the place the car crash interview of was it Natalie Bennett of the Green Party? There was this car crash interview on the radio where she couldn't answer a question, and she didn't have a prepared answer, or at least a satisfactory answer, and as a result she stammered, she stalled, and as a result they say, oh yeah, she's uncertain, so therefore as a result we can't trust the Green Party, therefore there you go, you got David Cameron, you got Nick Clegg, you got Nigel Farage, you got all the others who aren't acting as uncertain as she did, so therefore they must have better ideas. And that's the illusion that they put forward in front of you, and people swallow that hook, line and sinker, and they base it upon who sounded better, who made a better performance. Some people base their decisions on who won a debate based on how they slated the other parties. How can that actually be some kind of measure of an ability to present a political manifesto that actually has real functioning utility and solution power for the problems that we're holding? It can't. They have to make these emotional appeals, and as a result, the public, because they're educated to only really respond to these emotional appeals, because information has to be thought about, and that's difficult and that's time consuming, so it's easier to just be entertained by it. And the person that you're more likely to be in favour, thanks to the really arsehole mechanism of confirmation bias, you're more likely to sort of agree more with the person that you're already at least in part sympathetic towards. If you're more sympathetic to someone, you're more likely to see more of a merit in what they say that you agree with, and maybe even overlook some of the negative things, some of the things that they say that you don't agree with. Those are, oh well, he must have been joking, or we have loads of different ways of trying to confirm our bias, and we run from it. We stall, we stop, and this is one thing that's going to be clearly evident in the first audio clip that I'm going to play for you. This was actually recorded there was a conversation between I think it's James O'Brien, who's the host of LBC, so radio station in London, and he does a lot of political debate, and he's very, very good at it because he is able to just hammer home with those hard-hitting questions, those factual questions that need to be addressed, that need pressing issues that need to be solved, and whatever. And he's very good in his interview style, and I hope he doesn't mind that I've included this in his podcast. If he has a problem, then by all means, I invite him to contact me. Maybe we can have a discussion on air about it. But it was a discussion that James had with a supporter of UKIP, and the guy, I can't remember the guy's name was Jack from Welling, and the question of the show was, what are UKIP for? And he was challenging people to sort of call in and argue, if you support UKIP, by all means ring in and tell me what they're for. So Jack rang in, and the following is the exchange that they both had. So here's that.
We'll start with Jack, who's in Welling. Jack, what are they for?
Well, now, James, first of all, I've
I've got to correct you, and you keep saying UKIP are against and opposed to immigration. They're not. Why do you keep saying that?
Because that's what it says on the leaflets. We're full, we can't take any more, we've got to pull up the drawbridge, to quote Mr Farage himself. The numbers on the leaflets that were being put through letterboxes in Clacton talked about 500,000 people have arrived here in the last few months, and we simply can't accommodate them, and none of them were in Clacton.
Which is all true.
Well, I've just answered your question. So,
yeah,
none of them were in Clacton.
Well, hold on a minute. Well, Farage doesn't say that. He consistently says a quality system and a control. No, so how is it opposed?
The question you asked was, why do I say that? And I'll quote you, Mr Farage, saying we need to pull the drawbridge up. So, admittedly, he changes his mind every 5 minutes.
That's control. That can come under control.
Well, a drawbridge up. Controlled immigration over a drawbridge that isn't there. Okay, we'll give you that. So what do they stand for, Jack?
They stand for everything that the majority of the country have on their minds, James.
Yeah, go on.
For some reason you don't understand.
Go on.
Well, immigration, obviously.
Well, they don't stand for immigration, do they, Jack? We're trying to work out what they stand for. We know what they're against. What are they for?
Well, they're for the fact of the, they're listening to, obviously, what people want.
What are they for, Jack?
For loads of things, James.
Go on, then.
Well, tell me what they're against.
I already have. Now tell me what they're for.
Well, they're for a fairer Britain.
How does that work?
A sensible Britain. What do you mean? It's common sense.
No, it's not a policy, is it? We're all for a fairer Britain. We're all for apple pie and mother love. What are they? Give me a policy that they're for.
No, but the elite are not. What are you on about? The elite are not for a fairer Britain.
No. You mean the elites like people who pay £4 million to a political party and end up as campaign manager? Or people who donate £1 million on the lawn of their stately home? Or people who went to public school after a career in the city and boast about being Enoch Powell's chauffeur because he was the only one with a Jaguar? You mean elites like them, or a different kind of elite?
A different kind of elite.
Well, what kind of elite, then?
Money, James.
What kind of elite, Jack?
Every party needs money, James.
Yeah. Are we going to get a policy that they're for? What you're going to march for? What are they for?
Well, every party needs money, James. So let's get back on that point a minute.
No. The question we're doing today, the reason you rang in, the phone-in topic du jour is this. What are they for?
I've just told you a couple of things.
No, you told me common sense and fairness. They're not policies. NHS. The deputy leader of UKIP has stated that he cannot see the NHS surviving in its current form because it doesn't have any commercial competition. Paul Nuttall has deleted the tweet, but he's stated categorically that the NHS shouldn't even exist as a public sector service. So what are they for?
Is that in the manifesto?
What are they? I don't know what's in the manifesto because the economic spokesman made a speech at the conference and 2 days later the leader said that wasn't a policy at all. I don't think they've published a manifesto yet, have they? Well, you tell me, you're the supporter. What is in the manifesto?
Oh, there's too much to list right now.
Well, just give me your favourites, Jacko, come on.
Well, the fact of open-door immigration will
No, we know what they're against, Jack. What are they for?
That's the main... hold on a minute. That is the main question on everyone's lips at the moment, is immigration, because it is destroying the country.
I'll ask you again.
Too much of it is destroying the country.
I'll ask you again, what are they for?
I don't care whether UKIP prefer some other things that I would definitely not agree with. The fact that they're for the closure, or as you say, drawing the drawbridge up on immigration and slowing it down a bit is all I care about.
I understand that. Can you explain to me then why you think immigration was responsible for the problems of the people in Clacton where there isn't any immigration?
Because they know if they don't vote someone like UKIP in, it will end up being down there like it is in loads of places in London, in Bradford, where you can't...
It'll be like what?
What do you mean, be like what?
Do you just mean it'll be full of foreigners?
Well, yes.
Okay. Mate, I applaud your honesty.
Yeah. Is it any surprise? I mean, I hate to quote a warmonger, but is it any surprise that Winston Churchill once said, "The best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter"? Oh dear. Yeah, that, ladies and gents, is an example of the average voter in this country. In the UK right now, considering what the media are dealing with, what the media are pushing on us every single day, it's the idea that immigrants are destroying the country. And the thing is, that guy was scarily honest, right? If you pay attention to what he said, you will notice that the parody of a lot of blind sheeple voters that exists, he was actually embodying it. He actually said, and you know what? I'm probably paraphrasing here, but I wouldn't care if UKIP were for something that I would be totally against, but I would still vote for them because they care about immigration. Let that sink in. He would still vote for UKIP, even if UKIP proposed something that he would be totally against. Let's give an example. He sounded like, a lot of UKIP supporters, especially in London, let's make a wild leap here and say that he was a white male. I'd say he was a white, Caucasian male. For one thing, the white Europeans, we don't own these land masses. This is not our country, right? We are descended from the very first immigrants, like the Saxons and the Vikings. those kind of people, they're our ancestors, right? We're the ones who stole this landmass, raped, pillaged, destroyed, and then occupied, and then multiplied, and then several thousand years later, we say, "Oh, it's our country. Get out, you bloody immigrants." Let's just say, yeah, he's white Caucasian, right? The descendants of the forcible immigrants of this landmass, the UK. Let's just say if UKIP suddenly turned around and said, right, all white men have to die. I'm sorry, that includes Nigel Farage. We need, we will make him a martyr. That would be something that I dare say he would be totally against. But because UKIP also cares about stopping immigration, because if you really want to cut the mustard and say, okay, who's also an immigrant and descended from immigrants? White men. What if they need to be sent back to where they come from? Where does the white man come from? I know it's I know a lot of us we came from I think it was Western Europe, and we sort of spread and conquered Eastern Europe and the UK. Because where do you draw the line between someone who, because some people say, oh, I was born here, but a black man can also say that if he was born here, and and people say, oh, well, you should, your family wasn't born here. And how far down the generational line do we want to draw the distinction between homeland occupant and immigrant? Indigenous and immigrant. Where do we draw the line? None of us have that, because none of us actually none of us are descended from people who are actually born on this landmass. And if you think about the whole idea of humans owning strips of land for themselves, is completely fucking ridiculous anyway. But that's the kind of thing that we're dealing with people. Because UKIP supporters, they try their absolute best to separate themselves from BNP. they say, oh well, a lot of people, because there was the particular video that I used for that interview, the video for which I'll link in the video description for YouTube. It was one of 3 conversations. I could have used all 3 together, just used the audio from the whole video, but I thought that would be a bit cheeky, and I'd just pick my favourite. But that video, it's indicative of the kind of thinking that's necessary. Where, Jack was both honest and dishonest. He both spoke the actual blatant truth about his situation, that he would even vote for UKIP if they were for something that he was completely against. But the idea that the very direct question of what are they for, and he could not give an answer, because really the only thing that guy had absorbed from UKIP's manifesto was the word immigration and all the different buzzwords associated with their position on immigration, being that we need to draw up the pull up the drawbridge and all that stuff. And then their supporters come out and say, oh, it's untrue that we're against immigration. Why do you keep saying that? I mean, even Jack started with that. It's so much pageantry. It's so much pageantry and falseness, and it's really a pantomime. That's really what politics is. It's one big pantomime. And we need to stop, falling for it, because the thing is, we're not the only ones it's not just us in the UK that are really, dumbed down in terms of, who we're voting for and why, because the next video clip that I'm going to play is actually from one of Adam Kokesh's videos. I hope you don't mind, Adam, that I've used the audio from this. I've just cut off the bit that he puts at the end to sort of preview the other videos. But yeah, Adam, I hope you don't mind. But the particular video itself, I'll link this again in the video description. The video is called Obama Supporters Say the Darndest Things, and it's a real sort of expose of the kind of real superficial reasons that people have for appointing a person to run their country. Well, they think, Obama's running the country. They think that person is solely responsible, even though, we who know better know that, there's different tiers of delegation. The president isn't the only authority that can be overridden by Congress and blah 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 blah. But on the whole, these people think that they're presenting a good enough reason to give authority to a particular person over everything that they do, and it's scary how superficial some of these reasons are. So I'm not going to chanter on any more about it. I'll play it for you right now. So here we go.
You're a volunteer for the inaugural committee. You mind telling us why you support Obama? No?
Because he's my president.
Hold on, what's that? So you think Bush is a fascist, but Obama isn't?
I do, yeah.
So you started, an Obama supporter?
Yes.
You want to tell me why?
Because I'm doing the thing here.
What do you think he's doing to improve the economy?
Well, making some tough decisions around the debt ceiling. And
how come it's not working?
Well, I think he's meeting resistance. A lot of it is personal, but also, he's challenging the status quo.
Well, he is the status quo. he's he's done everything Bush did, but more.
Oh, I don't agree with that.
The bailouts, the stimulus, giving money to Wall Street, the wars, he sent more troops to Afghanistan.
No, that's not true. They're coming home.
No, it's true.
They're
he had a surge of 30,000.
Well, then you want to debate with me, right? Okay, have a good day.
Yeah, I'm an Obama supporter, man.
Yeah, you want to tell me why?
Man, because, I'm from the city, man, from D.C., a black man, you know what I'm saying? He's doing it out here he's showing love for all us black brothers out here, man. He's doing it, man. Make us feel good,
So it makes you feel good?
Yeah, it makes me feel good.
What's he doing?
See a black man, just to see a black man in the White House make me feel good.
With a two-party system, what would you have us do?
I don't support the two-party system.
I don't either, but we're in it right
Obama.
now.
He's part of the two-party system.
Yes, I absolutely do.
So how do you say that you don't support?
This is my president.
Wait. Really? Can you want to tell me why?
Why he's my president?
Why do you support him?
Do you see what my color is? That's why.
Do you think we're going to get full-on socialism? You think we're going to? I don't know if we're going to cross that threshold, but you think I don't think we're there yet, but we might get there in the second term. Is that one of your hopes?
If we keep praying. What is your answer? You want to stand in the middle of
nonviolence.
Yes, so do I.
No, you don't. You're an Obama supporter.
All right, so I get where you're at.
Okay,
all right,
thanks.
You have a closed mind and you have no plan.
So
no plan whatsoever.
You don't think Obama's violent?
No, I don't think he's violent. I think that if he was
standing there, strikes, he does
do
that
you think he
non-violently?
wants to go kill people with drone strikes?
Well, then
that's what he wants to do.
He orders it done, so I would assume.
All right, you're out of your mind.
$10. Hang it in your living room.
I'm great because I prayed and I believe that God picked the right president for us.
Ma'am, were you saying that people should be shot for passing out those fat flyers?
No, we don't care if it's his president. This is the United States of America. This is one of the best presidents we've ever had.
What do you think of the flyer, ma'am?
Pardon me?
What do you think of the flyer?
It's BS.
Exactly.
Well, you're not here. You're not here to protest?
No.
So you shouldn't be here neither.
And you know, Obama's name is in the Bible, in the 3 books of Judges.
Mm-hmm.
Another book.
Where you from, babe? 11.
Like if it's the people who really own our government, right? The people really in charge of this country are the banksters, the people that are profiting, that fund both candidates. You guys know about this, right? That it was like Goldman Sachs gave a lot of money to Obama, and they gave a lot of money to Romney, and they gave a lot of money to McCain. What if those people said, hey, you know what we can do? We can get people to accept anything. We can get people to accept the drug war continuing. We can get people accepting the wars continuing and the bailouts and the money going to really rich people. All we got to do is put a black man in charge. All we got to do is give him a different colored front man. And instead of you guys protesting and making change and demanding that things change, you guys will just say, oh, we just got to support him because he's black. Wouldn't that be a pretty genius ploy for them to get you guys
and you know what?
to sit on the sidelines?
I think that's exactly what they did.
Yeah?
I think that's exactly what they did. And I say that because it is. They had to do it like that now that you put it like that, because look how many black supporters he got now. You know what I'm saying? Bush was doing the same thing he's doing, but ain't really no black people like, he ain't had no black supporters. But man, you know what I'm saying? He got black supporters because he a black man. So I ain't gonna lie, the government, they was smart as shit for that one.
So are you an Obama supporter?
Sure.
And why do you support Obama?
Because Obama's done a lot of things in this country.
A lot of things.
A lot of bad things.
Like what?
Not bad things.
Everything's bad he's done.
Not really.
Like what? What do you like about what he's done?
Alright, thank you.
Ma'am, are you here to protest Obama?
No, I'm not. I'm here to support President Obama.
Can you mind telling me why for my YouTube channel?
Excuse me.
No.
Yeah. This country isn't the only one suffering from stupid people syndrome. Oh well, I mean, not all of them are completely stupid. I think mainly it's just because they're misinformed and they're misguided. They're misdirected. They're misdirected away from what's actually important to discuss, which is, what I'm, going to lead into now. As I alluded to before, the idea of politicians actually addressing important issues such as, the unsustainability of infinite growth on a finite planet, there's no chance that they're actually going to discuss that kind of thing, because it's a bit like what George Carlin once said. He said, honesty would fuck this place up. If politicians were actually honest, it wouldn't even be able to work, because without liars, how can the infinite growth system maintain the illusion of sustainability, the illusion of control, and everything else? It can't. They can't address the really important issues. They can't provide the actual direct answers that we actually want. They cannot do that for you, right? And this is, there's a way in part that it can be tackled, right? There's a way that I actually personally advocate myself with some of the activism that I do, and it was demonstrated by a woman during the ITV live debate, the election debate, and I haven't done enough research to find out whether anyone knows her name or not, but I was very impressed to see a person actually stand up, regardless of the fact that they had a group of politicians right in front of her, with all the prepared answers to shoot down her direct questions. She was surrounded by people who would most of the time be more likely to say, "Oh, shut up and sit down," wait your turn if you want to speak, all that sort of stuff, right? Like crabs in a bucket. They'll try to keep someone trying to climb out. But the thing is, she came across very confident, right? She came across very confident. She wasn't. She had open body language. She was gesticulating, and she, in a sense, it kind of looked. I dare say, if you were part of the audience, it looked like she was entitled to it. So a lot of people looked, but but if you have the certainty with which when you speak, people are less likely to try and shoot you down, because they assume, oh, that person's they look like they've got situational confidence in that sense, at least from that singular perspective, because you may not have seen them in any other situation. So they say, well, you've got confidence in this situation, but sometimes as time goes on, people start to question, do you have confidence in all kinds of situations? Are you really a person that is truly confident, not just entitled to speak up during a debate? But she actually spoke up to raise the point that there are topics that aren't being discussed. And granted, I don't agree with her list of I dare say if I sat her down, we'd probably be able to agree on a much more extensive list of things that aren't being discussed. But I think she did boil it down, for the sake of brevity, because she couldn't stand up there and speak for ages and ages. She had to get out some really good ones, and I dare say a lot of them were ones that were close to her. She said she'd worked with people who were dealing with homelessness, but on the issue of this tactic, it can be effective, because some people have been, a lot of people have been talking about. I think it was trending for ages that a heckler interrupted David Cameron. There's all these YouTube videos up with a lot of them with hyperbolic language. It's like, watch the moment that a woman interrupted the Prime Minister during a debate. It's things like that. But I'll play you the clip of when she actually interrupted, and pay close attention to the fact that it was dealt, the way the situation was dealt with is something that we need to tackle on top of doing things like this. But I actually wholly advocate people actually personally standing up and holding public officials to public accountability. But anyway, there's enough with my rambling on. Here's the clip.
We have clout in the world. We can get things done in the world. Think of what some of our people are doing right now. We've got nurses in West Africa helping to deal with Ebola. We've got some of the most brave and professional armed services anywhere in the world, and tonight's a good moment to say thank you to them for all they do. We're a nation of great inventors.
When there's homeless people on the streets who've been in the service here. Not from the audience, thank you.
I think it's good to say...
Because I'm worried that at the end of the day there's more
Thank you very much indeed.
They're not listening to our concerns.
But the lady makes an important point, which is there are people who come out of our armed services who do have difficulties, and that's why we should be putting money into the armed forces charities that help homeless people and people also with mental health problems when they come out of our armed services.
Thank you very much. Let's return to the...
There you are. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, it is possible to crack the matrix, at least to a certain degree. The moderator was just trying to shut her down, and I mean, yes, granted, she did interrupt David Cameron like mid-sentence, but it was, I feel she was justified, because it was a bit of a sneaky way to say, oh yeah, thank you for your service, So I think, oh yeah, because that's a propaganda spike. That's what I call a propaganda spike, where they'll use certain buzzwords or buzz phrases that sort of specifically pander to particular people. Like, for example, the armed services. Even though armed services are being ordered to go out and kill and die for the interests of oil companies and business interests, they say, "Oh, thank you for your service. Yeah, you help pay my wages. Thank you." But yeah, I mean that was cheeky to try to put that in there, and I think she was justified to want to speak because of that. She was, and it was weird how the moderator was trying to shut her down. She was just not listening. She was just going for it because she was targeting David Cameron like directly. And she was asking him this question, and he didn't really respond to her. He didn't respond to her. He responded to the audience to basically say, "Oh, well, the lady's making an important point." Trying to say, well, yes, I'm not going to be a complete arsehole and say, get the fuck out of here, don't interrupt me during a debate, I'm the fucking Prime Minister. No, he doesn't do that. He goes for another pandering route of, yes, the lady makes an important point, that's why more money has to be put forward towards the charities to help those servicemen, even though it's not going to be coming out of his own wallet though. But the thing is, even because if you don't think about that concept for more than 5 seconds, you think, oh yeah, sending money to a charity dealing with former servicemen, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but it doesn't take into consideration the idea that they were sent to kill and die in the first place for interests that they weren't even aware of at the time, because if they were fully aware of them, maybe they would not have gone to fight for oil pipelines or the war chests of international bankers. Maybe they would not have gone for that. That's why politicians push forward the idea of thanking servicemen for their service, because yes, you help service the establishment, you help protect the monetary interests of the establishment itself. So yes, as a result, thank you for your service. That's put onto us virally, so we start thinking, yeah, they're our heroes, when in fact they're just men who've been caught up in a war machine because they've been enticed by propaganda and they've been put through the meat grinder. I mean, even the film Starship Troopers, towards the beginning, one of the guys who works in the I think it's like a recruitment centre that they go to towards the beginning, and this is the guy who lost his legs, by the way, and he says, "Fresh meat for the grinder, eh?" And they think it's perfectly fine to think about war like that, because they think, yeah, that's what we got to do. We got to do our service. But yeah, she how he dealt with it was the pandering way of, yes, the lady makes an important point, blah, 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 not responding to her, but just responding to the audience. But, I bet he was, I wouldn't bet, but I'd hazard a guess that he was thinking, yes, the lady makes an important point, security, get her the fuck out of here. But yes, she makes an important point. Get her out of here. I'm not going to address her. I'm not going to actually open up a dialogue. But yeah, she makes an important point. But yeah, it's interesting how that kind of dynamic can play out, and especially if journalists get a hold of her after the fact, which they did, and I'll play you that little clip right now.
Ex-military service people on the streets, suffering from homelessness, deprivation and poverty, and I was really upset that David Cameron tried to use the name of military service personnel to garner votes when actually they are being abandoned homeless on the streets and also suffering from welfare benefit cuts. In fact, so are a lot of people I work with on a daily basis, homeless, poor with their educational chances scuppered. There's a lot of problems going on with backhanders where fracking might be allowed. There's so many problems that I just felt I had to stand up and say something, especially as soon as I gave them nearly a full hour and I found that they were still lying about a lot of the issues. Or, instead of lying, let's just say omitting the facts, because that's what they really do. That's what they've had a lifetime of training to achieve. That's why they all come from the same posh schools and why I'd never have a chance to get a say until tonight when you're all suddenly photographing me. So yeah, people, you know what? There is a truth out there. The truth is that the 1% of people who rule us are not working for our best interest. But the 99%, that's the rest of us, if we start coming together in community projects and talking to each other properly, we might be able to do better for ourselves than having to be led by people who lie, omit facts and spend our money on themselves.
Okay, this is a formal invitation. Lady, whoever you are, this is a formal invitation. Come on to the show. Let's have a chat. I thank you for doing what you did. She actually made a hell of a good few points. And if I dare say, if I was stuck, with like several journalists around me saying, well, just giving me that like minute or so of a soundbite, then I would say something very similar to that. I would say that they're not dealing with the problems. They're lying about different things and they're concealing truths. And she actually presented even basically a very abridged version of how we transition into a sustainable world, which is helping community projects and learn how to talk better, right? And that I would elaborate being things like non-violent communication, adopting the teaching of non-violent communication into schools, into our educational system. I think would be wonderful. I think it would be truly transformative, because when you learn non-violent communication, as I've started recently, despite the recent death of Marshall Rosenberg, I didn't realise that he died recently. But I think adopting that into our way of being in the world, it's I think it will be really, really helpful. So she made a hell of a lot of good points. So whoever you are, this is an invitation to get in contact with me somehow. You can contact me through YouTube. You can find me on Facebook and on Twitter. But yeah, get a hold of me. This is an invitation to come onto the show. Let's hammer out some ideas for how we actually make this world a better place. This is an invitation. Your bravery is something that needs to spread. More people need to be that brave. That's what I think I would have done if I was in your position. I would have stood up and just cut in and said, look, this is not explaining anything, that but yeah. But the thing is, there's only one critique that I would have for that kind, because most people when they level sort of criticisms at the system, it tends to just be that. You know, the idea of putting the world to rights, it didn't. It doesn't have the full explanatory power of saying, right, okay, we know there's problems, but what's the solution, right? And and for the people who only saw the bit where she interrupted and not the video after, they wouldn't have any idea of what she proposes as a solution. You know, she when she was up there, she was just presenting criticisms which politicians are used to. So, but then again, I've been in situations where I've been, faced with the media in a very short amount of time, and not exactly said what I was probably should have said. When Jeremy Vine asked me what a resource-based economy is, I said that it's it's a system that works in line with the laws of nature. I think that's what I said. Or it's I compared it to the functioning of the human body, I think. But it's efficient and effective. But because I was just going on the fly. But yeah, I mean, pointing out the flaws in any system is great, but it's not enough. All right. You must also present an alternative or a solution, and this is where it segues into the next part of the podcast that I'm going to do now, which deals with guerrilla activism. This is one thing that we're going to be dealing with a lot at Z-Day in London, because there's going to be like a big section where we're going to be discussing how we can get involved, and here's some just some ideas off the top of my head. If I haven't written an exhaustive list yet, but I am in the process of writing all the list of all the things that a person can do, even on the very small level, to advocate and help the transition towards a resource-based economic model, or natural or resource-based economy, or steady-state economy, whatever you want to call it, a sustainable world. One of the things that I've done is writing on money. Now, this you've got to be careful about, because it's I would say just write along the border, and when you do, just write little questions. Like, one of the things that I used to do is write pounds of what, and things like what's it? Money ruins everything it touches. I'm a piece of paper and I rule your life. Things like that along the border, right? And a lot of people would be discouraged about doing this sort of thing, because generally when you do this, you're like, well, I've got to use the note for things that I buy, because we live in a monetary system, obviously. But I keep thinking to myself, if I hand it over and it's been written on, the cashier might not accept it. Here's where technological automation lends a hand. Self-service checkouts, right? Use the money that you write on in self-service checkouts. That way, the machine, at least at this point, is not designed to reject your note because you've written a little thought-inspiring a very brief thought-inspiring question along the border of it. Right? It's not going to reject it on that basis. So, you can have it folded up in your pocket, and as soon as the machine asks you to pay, just get it out, quickly put it in, right? And then that note, that's going round the system now. At some point, there are going to be multiple people that are going to get that note, either in a wage packet, or from the bank, or cash in hand where they work, or they're going to get or money lent to them, or given back, or whatever. That someone's going to receive that note, and they're going to look at that and they might consider the question. So use the monetary... This is how you can use the monetary system against itself. Yeah? Inspire questions written along the border. I've toyed back and forth in the past about whether to write any website addresses on banknotes. I'm going to err on the side of caution on this one and say I'm not going to write website addresses on banknotes, because, you know, it could be something that could be grabbed on by the media and saying, oh, this is what the Zeitgeist movement are doing, you know. So it will probably be a good idea not to link the Zeitgeist movement on there, just to use the notes themselves as, you know, a tiny flyer, right? Devote think of it as the banknotes that you use, right? Support the automation of labour by using these machines, right? And in doing so, you spread questions around the monetary system itself by using the notes as carriers. And, you know, I mean, yes, granted, there may be, I mean, I don't know whether there's any sort of authorities that would basically extract these notes out of circulation and burn them or something. I think that would be rather childish. Maybe there is measures in place to sort of deal with defaced notes, but at least this way you're not defacing the note, right? You're just writing along the board. Don't write on the ink. Only write along the border, because that is blank space, ladies and gents. That's blank writing space. So ask some thought-provoking questions, and, you know, I mean, maybe make a couple of ironic sort of statements like, I'm a piece of paper and I rule your life, because it is true to a certain extent, but, you know, use our money to defeat people's belief in the money. Yeah, so that's one of the things you can do. When it comes, because I mentioned very briefly about the idea of flyers, we normally, when it comes to a chapter, there's a mass production of leaflets going on, because, you know, any good chapter is holding, you know, awareness events such as information stalls, and, you know, where they give out leaflets. So, you know, it's a good thing for chapters to have plenty of leaflets, and if like me you can't afford really to have the colour, you know, double-sided glossy paper leaflets that are all professional looking and brilliant, if you don't have the funds to do that, then, you know, take some from any event, or just ask, you know, is it alright if I just take some of these home and, like, give them out? But I can't think of any reason why anyone in a chapter would say, oh, no, you've got to leave those leaflets for the chapter. Don't you dare spread this information. No, they're not going to do that. So yeah, basically take flyers, or even if not, find a way to print out your own. My local library charges, I think it's £50 per side if it's black and white, and that's you know, it doesn't have to be coloured. It's just an optional, you know, but advantageous aesthetic to add on for it to look professional looking. But there's places where you can drop these flyers. There's places where you can put these flyers for other people to see and potentially pick up or read. One of the places that I've put leaflets is waiting rooms. Even in the job centre that I used to go to, there was they had sections where there was like a few sofas like put together, and a ring binder that actually had printouts for all the actual open vacancies, and I'd maybe put a flyer maybe towards the back of the ring binder. Something like that would be, you know, very, very easy and very low risk to sort of just put in there, and other people might open it up later on and say, "Ooh, what's this?" and they take it out and they might read it, and it might actually relate to something that they're thinking about at that point, or something that, they're some kind of problem that is affecting them directly, maybe the flyer would speak directly to that. Maybe you can garner flyers specifically for different places and drop them there specifically. This can be done very discreetly. You don't have to. I mean, I would generally operate on just an assumption of permission, because if you ask permission, you give them the opportunity to say no. But if you just assume the permission, I mean, there's obviously places where you shouldn't drop leaflets, but places where other leaflets are, like say for example, there are a lot of places that have tourist information sections where there's racks of leaflets of like the local attractions like zoos and amusement parks and museums and libraries and blah blah blah. Maybe put a couple in there, but like small flyers, like unassuming flyers, nothing sort of. I suppose you do want to attract attention to them, but you don't want to attract attention in the way that, this is something that's trying to get your attention that shouldn't even be here. It should be something. Yes, this is important information. It shouldn't say anything more than that. It's just this is this is interesting. That's what they should think. They shouldn't think whether that leaflet should be there or not. They should think, what's that? That's what people need to think. Another place is a toilet. A lot of places, especially in London, they actually have little advertising poster frames with adverts for. I think it's for no win, no fee lawyer things, or car insurance, or things like that. See if you can wedge a leaflet in one of the corners of the frame, because those frames are deliberately positioned for advertising purposes. They're placed above the urinals, and sometimes next to, and sometimes above the hand dryer, because they are in a focal point of peripheral vision when performing a specific action. For example, pissing into a urinal. Men are generally, like in this modern society, they're just going to not want to make eye contact with anyone else while their penis is in their hand, and especially if there are other men with penises in their hand around at the same time. You don't want to make eye contact, so chances are you're just going to look straight ahead, or you're just going to look down. But if there's something interesting in front of you, then you're more likely to read it. And if there's a flyer there that you put, you can just quickly put it in there. Don't try to put one in every single one. Maybe put two in either end of the room or something. I've done that before. I put a Zeitgeist movement flyer and a Venus Project flyer in the same frame. I should upload that picture to Facebook actually. Trains is another good place to drop flyers. When I used to take the train, I used to basically, the train I got on when I was going home was sort of like a 6 to 8 carriage train. And what I'd do is I'd go from where I got on, I'd find somewhere to sit, put my bag or coat or whatever down under a table, and I'd basically go to I'd go to the far all the way down to one end of the train, dropping leaflets onto the tables, and especially on a I'm not going to put it in someone's lap, but if they're sat at a table and they look like they might be if they look over preoccupied, or if they're texting, or if they're reading or something, then chances are I won't put a leaflet there. But if they're more likely to actually pick it up and read it as soon as I slap it down on the table, then I will actually put one down, and I will put one down on every single one of the tables, right? And I will leaflet that entire train, right? But just the tables, or the places where and when I put it down, what do I say? I don't even break a stride. Maybe I break a stride a little bit to slow down a bit, but I say, here you go, a little bit of light reading for you, and I carry on. Right? That's it. Right? And I've known people to actually immediately pick them up and start reading and say, the Zeitgeist movement, what's this? You know? And I hear that just as I'm like, you know, going along, and you know, and I build up momentum as I go. I start getting more of a smile on my face, and that's how the Q&A set, the impromptu Q&A session that I talked about in the last podcast, that's how it manifested, because I went down the train, dropped a leaflet on one of their tables, said, there you go, a little bit of light reading for you, carried on. And on the way back up the train, because I was, you know, I'd reached the end of the train and I was returning back to my seat, that's when they collared me to answer a few questions. So I'd say, you know, trains are a brilliant place, because even if none of the passengers actually pick up and read any of them, then some human being is going to pick up the leaflets at some point, even if that's the trash collector at the end of the night. And he might, I mean, if you think about it, a trash collector on a train, that's a real life-wasting job, isn't it? That's not exactly a job that inspires human creativity and excellence and knowledge and all that sort of stuff. It's just, you know, because I think it's the job of the conductor or whatever. But yeah, going up and down a train, picking up rubbish and cleaning, whatever. Yeah, that's not a brilliant job. So you can understand someone in that position who might hate their job. I mean, like last thing on a Saturday night, when they would rather be out having fun with their friends and mingling with people and getting into adventures and having fun, they're instead having to pick up fucking trash from other drunk people who have been using the train. And then amongst that rubbish, he comes across a leaflet, the Zeitgeist movement. You know, and they say it's talking about, you know, a better world, and it's like, that's interesting, because it relates directly to them, you see. So maybe the flyers that you put on trains should be deliberately designed to target and appeal to train rubbish collectors. But another place is pubs. You know, a lot of pubs have, you know, sections where, I don't know, even if it's like a windowsill, they might have like a few flyers down for maybe local charities or cancer research or, you know, local attractions or whatever. Put maybe, now, the question is, how many flyers do you put down? I've generally settled on 5. Yeah, 5 is sort of like a compromise between enough so that, you know, a good amount of people will pick them up and read them, but it's also low enough to not be considered like overbearing, because there may be other leaflets there where there's only like 2 or 3 leaflets, and you come in with a stack of 10 leaflets, slap them down there. They don't generally look like they you know, I mean, most flyers for, you know, social movements or anything, they wouldn't really look in place with local attraction leaflets and cancer research leaflets, would they? So, you know, I'd say it's not a good idea to put so many in that, so many leaflets down that people, you know, it's like they become too visible, if you get what I mean, because a lot of this, you're going in under the radar. You're producing, you're essentially distributing counterculture media. That's what you're doing. You're presenting media in the form of leaflets that questions the very underlying assumptions of the monetary system. Yeah, so there needs to be some tact in there, and I'd say the most amount of leaflets that I would drop down in, say, you know, a waiting room or something, is 5 leaflets next to where there are other similar numbered leaflet stacks. Yeah, Either that, or just somewhere like to the side, or not somewhere that immediately jumps out at people saying look at me sort of thing, but amongst everything, because I think in waiting rooms people do get very bored. So having something easily to hand which is counterculture and something that will enable them to think, I think is a good idea to pursue. But another thing that I've found that is brilliant is engaging current events media. For example, talk shows or any kind of radio show or media outlet that allows the public to voice their opinion. Because one of the things, it's kind of like a double-edged sword that the media uses, which is public input. Right, Vox Pops interviews. Right, they seem like a good thing where it's like, yes, the public have their say, and but we can use that to also put forward our ideas as well. One of the examples of shows of this that I've personally have found success in the past, not recently, but in the past, having comments read out and even going live on the air to talk to Jeremy Vine himself, is the Jeremy Vine Show. And even though, yes, I call the Jeremy Vine Show the 2-hour hate instead of the 2 minutes hate, 2 minutes of hate, the 2 hours of hate. Even though I do call it an echo chamber, at the same time, it can be very important for injecting the public consensus with sustainable ideas, sustainable values, and sustainable insights. Right? It's like any echo chamber, yes, the voices reverberate around the echo chamber, they seem to justify each other, but the more voices that are injected into that echo chamber that drown out the established views that only are spoken to serve the current status quo, they get drowned out, the more people actually produce a counterculture example of how we can actually arrive at decisions as opposed to just making them. There's so much emotional appeals and illogical thinking in our social consensus that we almost can't recognise logical reasoning. We think logical reasoning is something that is for scientists in the lab or something, not for how you run a country or anything. That's about what you can say you can do and what you can change. Be. You see? So there's different things you can do. You can either, if you have a BT landline, the phone number for the Jeremy Vine Show for BBC Radio 2 is an 0500 number, which is the same effect of the 0800 number, which is free from a BT landline. So one thing that I ask people to do, and one thing that I do myself every single weekday, is I set my alarm for 11:27, right? And at 11:27, I switch my phone, which my old phone that I've had for like over 4 years. It's like this old thing. Still works. I use that mainly for calls, texts, and an MP3 player, and for the radio now. So 11:27. The phone, because the alarm is on my phone, so it interrupts whatever I'm listening to, whether it's a documentary or an Eckhart Tolle talk. But yeah, notifies me because at 11:30 Jeremy Vine comes on to Ken Bruce's radio show, and he talks about, and he basically briefly summarises what 4 topics the Jeremy Vine show is covering that day at midday. So from that point you have half an hour until the Jeremy Vine show starts, right? So you have that half an hour to think about what topics they're covering and think whether you have anything substantial and good to say about those particular topics. Right? This is what and this is what I do, and I encourage other people to do the same. One of the things that I recently sent in was because when they were talking about the economy, because this was whole before the debate, they were talking about the economy, and what I sent in was, quote, "Why is there so much talk about economic growth without any mention of the limits? Or do we honestly believe that we can grow and consume infinitely on a planet of finite resources? What is more important, sustainability or the economy?" End quote. That was one of the things that I sent in, and I sent that via an email. Right? I mean, where I work, I have to like stand in an alleyway with my iPhone, because my laptop won't. The signal isn't brilliant on the laptop, so I have to stand in an alleyway, like tapping away on my hand-me-down iPhone, sending this email through, because I'm basically accessing a hotspot which is created in the house next door. So because I'm a BT customer, I can use the hotspot. And I send the email that way, and I post the exact same thing up on the Facebook. On Facebook, and sometimes on the Zeitgeist Movement UK Transition Group, and I post that up and I say, I dare you to post something similar. I dare you to send them something similar. So you can either email them, that's free. You can text if you want to expend the money on text. I probably wouldn't personally recommend it. Or you can call them, and if you're on a BT landline, it's free. So you can actually get on the air and you can express things like this, for example, when it comes to, before the election, they were talking about, we need to create jobs. This is one of the things I said, quote, "It doesn't matter how many jobs we create. Human labour is being made increasingly obsolete by technological automation. Those jobs are not coming back, and we wouldn't want them to. It's what we developed technology for in the first place." End quote. Now, obviously, I'm sending these in the hope that Jeremy Vine will read them out himself. He has read out a couple of my responses before. One of them was because I think they were discussing security concerns of politicians and stuff like that, and like whether we need more security. And I said, it doesn't matter what measures of security we put up. If someone wants to blow up a plane, they're going to find a way to do it. That's basically what I said, and Jeremy Vine actually read that out. So this thing can be cracked, and I think the more people that send in these kinds of statements, the more likely they are to be read out on the air. The more likelihood it's just yes, it's a numbers game. Yes, it's a numbers game, but it's a game that works, right? We just need numbers. This is one of the things that me and David Dan, the UK chapter coordinator, the things that we were talking about for ways to actually get involved and spread the message of this. A lot of the time it comes down to, but we need more people for that. We've got so many brilliant ideas of things to do, but we need more people. And I think it's numbers that actually succeeds in this sort of thing. Even if you want to use a fictional context of Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, right? The Martians underestimated our numbers, right? Because it's numbers that can actually achieve things. If we have numbers of people sending in things like this, for example, quote, "Neither party presents an effective means to govern society. The idea of appointing millionaire businessmen to have power over everyone else is an idea that should have gone along with the rest of medieval feudalism. We need to each be our own leaders, arriving at decisions objectively, not allowing others to make them for us through vested interests." End quote. I think if more people sent things like that into the Jeremy Vine show, it's more likely that they'll be read out on the air, and thus more of a sane voice is injected into the public consensus, right? We need to achieve that. We need to infiltrate the mainstream consciousness by, bringing our statements that explain the train of thought and scale it down as much as we can. I mean, we can't fully scale it down because, you know, the idea of a non-monetary system is not exactly very scalable at all to mainstream consciousness. So we have to scale it down as far as we can to really sort of like hit home. This is why I made the weapons of mass discussion presentation, you know, to showcase, you know, a bunch of logic bombs. It was that video is just a war chest of logic bombs. That's it. It's an armory chest, or you know, whatever the name is for the container of bombs, whatever that is. It's that for logic bombs. That's why I made it, so people can quickly and easily dispel the rhetoric that we're faced with, and the rhetoric that we keep repeating, not because we've actually thought about it, but because that's all we've ever known. But another way of spreading this information: mention it in passing to other people that you meet in day-to-day life, whether it's in a queue. You know, you could be stood there and complaining about, you know, oh yeah, they keep us waiting, no. You'd say, well, that wouldn't happen in a natural law, resource-based economy. Well, that wouldn't happen in a resource, you know, whatever you want to call it, you know, boil it down a little bit, because natural law, resource-based economy, yes, that's a little bit too long-winded. And you can't say NLRBE, because I don't know what that means. So, you know, find ways of, you know, saying it wouldn't happen in a sustainable world. You know, say something like that. But yeah, you could say things like that. The bus is a good place. There you've actually got them there, and you can sort of like gauge the receptiveness of a conversation there. And well, I mean, obviously, when they start climbing up, you need to sort of, you know, you need to back off and, you know, just lighten it a bit, because we're presenting. I mean, I can go into that in a bit, but because I'm going to be dealing with that in just a moment, because this podcast is getting quite long. But yeah, coffee shops, that's another place. You know, if you because you're in close proximity with people having informal conversations, and sometimes formal conversations, but generally if it's a formal conversation, then, you know, they will want privacy, so it's not a good idea to interrupt that. But sometimes you can, you know, hear what people are saying, and maybe, you know, you got to wait for a gap. You got to wait for a moment where you know that it's more likely that they would be receptive to just a little quick, sort of like informal and gentle statement that explains something, or maybe makes, if they're having a light-hearted conversation, make a similar joke along with them, but something that makes them question a little bit, or at least raises a question. You know, this is the things we need to do. We need to start raising questions using the Socratic method, because the thing is, when you present a piece of information, the first thing a person is going to do is they're going to think about how it relates to them and whether they think it's true or not. Right? That doesn't necessarily exactly help when it comes to information that they aren't even aware of yet, and the information that is completely foreign to them and something that they'd never really thought about. You know, they're not immediately going to spin round and say, you know what, I only just heard about a resource-based economy 20 seconds ago from you, but it sounds good, sign me up. No one's going to say that. You know, you're not going to turn someone around completely and instantly. I mean, there may be some cases where you can maybe trigger some kind of satori in someone. Satori is a concept in Zen Buddhism where it's sort of like a sudden realization or an epiphany, and it's normally accompanied by either shouting or laughter. You know, that was a good Eckhart Tolle joke. But yeah, when you present that piece of information, they start thinking whether they agree. But if you ask them a question, you're not imposing a piece of information upon their worldview. You're giving them the opportunity and maybe prodding them a little to generate their own information, right? Because a lot of people know what the problems actually are, but whenever they think about the problems themselves, they're blocked from progressing onto a solution-orientated mindset, because there's the brick wall of assumption right there of assuming that that's the way it is. The brick wall of that's the way it is what stops people from going from ranting about problems to looking for and advocating solutions. That's why a lot of political debates with most people end with, oh, well, that's just the way it is, mate. Can't you just conform? And I've had that quite a few times. So the idea is that when you use the Socratic method in terms of inspiring someone to start questioning the system in which they live and the values that they've been taught to hold, you inspire them to start them on their own journey of questioning and discovery. Yeah? So that's why the Socratic method needs to be used. This is one thing that was brought up in the meeting, the London chapter meeting quite recently, that, when you use the Socratic method, it's a far more effective way of communicating, because when they're starting to bubble up a question, they're not reacting against a new and maybe threatening piece of information. But that's, we can go into a whole different rabbit hole with that one. But another way that you can spread awareness, bumper stickers. It's one thing that if you own a car, or if you own some kind of vehicle, and it's for your own personal use, and as a result, no one is going to penalise you for putting maybe a Zeitgeist movement bumper sticker on your car, or maybe some kind of design on your vehicle, that can be very effective. Before there was the London taxi that was it was fitted with its whole bodywork was decorated with a big Venus Project design. I don't know what material it was made out of, but it was sort of the whole bodywork was just covered with a Venus. Basically, the whole thing was like a Venus Project poster on wheels, and there were leaflets inside and things like that. You can do that with your own personal car if you want. It might attract. One of the things that I used to do, there was a girl that I used to see in Worthing, and when I used to drive down to her, I parked in front of the job centre, because that was on the same road, and I'd have a Zeitgeist movement flyer sellotaped to the inside of the passenger side window, the back passenger window, and I'd have that basically facing the pavement, so people would come out of the job centre and they'd see a car with something stuck to the inside of the window. Oh, what's that? Oh, it's information about how we can have a word without the need for money. Brilliant! I fucking hate not having a job. And not having money. So, and I got a guy who basically wrote on the back of it. In the job centre, the machines that print out job details for you. He basically wrote on the back of that. I don't understand why I wasn't able to get in contact with him, because the number that he gave for me didn't work. But yeah, he gave his number at the bottom and saying, all this time I keep thinking that there's something more, and I really enjoyed reading the thing. I'd like to get in touch with you and discuss what this is all about. And but that sort of thing can be effective. There was also a boat. Yeah, I can't forget to mention the boat that was done. I can't remember whose boat it was, but it had a huge Zeitgeist movement design along the side of it, and images of that go viral around the place, and it gets people questioning what is the Zeitgeist movement? What does the Zeitgeist movement do? What does it propose? There was also another thing called the One Planet Project, and that the idea of that was to because it was sort of like an awareness campaign thing. The website, the main website, is down at the moment. I have let the guys know on the Facebook page and on the UK Zeitgeist movement page, I think. But yeah, the idea was to, they had like a series of questions to ask members of the general public, and I think it was multiple choice questions as well about the energy potential of geothermal energy, and the facts about fractional reserve banking and things like that. And they would ask them the questions, they give their answers, and they'd say right, and they go through each question and give the actual answer and explain why. And that was a very effective thing that can be done. So yeah, the One Planet Project, that's also good as well. There's if you want to take a sort of angle that isn't necessarily Zeitgeist movement orientated, there's a book that I would recommend. It's by Michael Norton. It's called The Everyday Activist, and it's a very good and very comprehensive sort of step-by-step guide of a huge amount of things that anyone can actually do. Things like whenever you have a shoebox, don't throw it away. Fill it with like useful things, and and give like a little bit of like canned food and some toiletries or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. It's been a while since I've read the book cover to cover, but yeah, give that to someone who's going over to give aid in another country, because there was this thing before last Christmas, and it was the rucksack project or something, and basically you get an old rucksack that you don't use, fill it with stuff that would be really fucking useful for homeless people, and basically there was this campaign to sort of like collect them together and distribute the rucksacks to homeless people themselves. Things like that. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, yes, granted, they don't also, advocate a solution, but it's at least partly helpful in soothing the actual problems themselves. That's why I'm not completely anti-patchwork. I mean, yes, I recognise that it is patchwork, and it won't ultimately by itself move us into a resource-based economy. There's a lot of other things that we need to do instead, but that doesn't take away from the importance of that sort of thing. But I mean, there's one sort of like a quote meme that's gone around Facebook recently, and I liked it so much that I decided to use it as the wallpaper on my iPhone. But I mean, I've tried to do some research on who actually said this, but I mean, I can't find any sources that says who it is, so I'll just say it was an unknown author. But it really does sum up really well the position, role, and responsibilities of the activist themselves. Says the activist, it starts like an itch. Something happens in our lives that causes us to question what we know. We open our eyes and seek the truth. The more we uncover, the hungrier we are for understanding. But the world isn't perfect, and there's a lot of pain and deception. We have the burning desire to do more. We read a lot. We start protesting. Our family labels us as too negative. Our friends start to pull away. Our spouses reject us. We are labelled as hippies, anarchists, angry kids, conspiracy theorists and terrorists. We are beaten by police and mocked by the news. Yet we have become obsessed with spreading the truth. It becomes a very, very solitary journey. End quote. Now that sums up exactly what an activist is, and what an activist does, how an activist feels, and how an activist is treated. It's very, very, very accurate. And I think that is something that that should, I mean, it's only a negative description because the activist lives within a system that rejects the very idea of activism. Yeah, I mean, yes, progress on some level is advocated as what the system in part requires, because otherwise it would completely stagnate. There is sort of like turnover and new things that need to come in all the time, but only if those new things provide the profit. If new things come in that aren't beneficial to the system, then they're not rewarded with the media's attention, or at least not rewarded with the media's positive attention, right? And this is partly why politics itself cannot be used to subvert the system, because the media will, even if the media does give you attention for your political capacity, then it will be through a specific filter to say, oh, this is what they believe, and it's different than what David Cameron is saying, so you might not want to believe them. That's the assumption that they go with. But these are the kind of values that we need to put forth. In order to actually move us forward, we need to have those compassionate ways, just like what that lady who interrupted the debate said. She was saying that we need to learn to talk to each other properly. We need to support family communities. Very few people are taught how to be altruistic, because that's not in line with the necessary values and behaviours required to maximise self-interest, which is, in part, the basis for the profit-driven monetary system. Thus, as a result, you should expect acquisitive, selfish, hostile and apathetic behaviours, because that's what the system rewards. If you want people to respect each other, then such values need to be intrinsic to the socio-economic framework and educational system itself, something that the current system has the opposite of. And if you have to enact laws to force people to behave in a certain way, then by design your system does not work. Every single law created is an admission that the system doesn't inherently reward, reinforce and perpetuate positive social and sustainable values. It's a matter of, ultimately it comes down to a matter of whether the system meets our needs. The meeting of basic human needs at least helps a great deal, that's why what I said earlier about the patchwork can help. It's not the whole solution, but it's part of the solution. Human behaviour resorts to the kind of violent things that they're conditioned to believe, which are generally assumed to be in our nature, because otherwise we would start thinking, well, why are they acting that way? Are they acting that way because they're starving? Are they acting that way because they're stressed? No, it's in our nature to be like that, so therefore we shouldn't question it anymore. But in reality, it's nothing more than our reactions to try and meet our needs when they're not being met. And how we enact those attempts to meet our needs will be, as I said, dictated by the dominant social conditioning and also first-hand experience. So, for instance, someone raised in to believe that using violence is the way to go, and you get what you want by using violence, then you are more likely to use violence to meet your needs. This is why believing that the behaviour we display is an expression of our nature is a fallacy, because it ignores the chain of causality between our needs and our means that we have developed to meet those needs. The transition starts from within. Being an example of the kind of values and lifestyle that you advocate and inspire others by doing it, because you become your own leader. This leads into the need to outgrow the supposed need for external governance. When people are raised with altruistic values, and when the overarching socio-economic ideology also has those values in mind and respects those values, then you have the perfect recipe of raising altruistic people and raising an altruistic socioeconomic system. But getting there, that is always the question being asked so loudly that most people don't even listen to the answer. But that will be a matter of innovating out of needing such ridiculous systems of control and infinite consumption, and stepping up and radiating those kinds of values to others to create a shift in value systems. Okay? So, I mean, this is summed up by the Mohandas Gandhi quote when he said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And how do we be the change? We need to, in effect, first change within ourselves by means of improving ourselves, by finding ways that we can enrich our experience of life and better the way that we conduct ourselves in our lives. And one of the ways that I've found that I've been able to do this is through self-development programs. The idea that in order to be successful in life, you need to become the best version of yourself as much as you can, and outgrow the negative and scarcity-based beliefs and behaviours that have always got you the shitty results before. Becoming the best version of yourself is really the most productive way to be in your life anyway. And because obviously some of the self-development programs that I listen to are also geared towards becoming a man that's naturally attractive to women, because most guys really don't know how to communicate properly with women. They go up to them because as sort of like value leeches, because they can't generate their own positive emotions, so they have to button push for good reactions in terms of doing things to impress them, or chat up lines or things like that, things that aren't really true to themselves, that aren't congruent to themselves, and thus are completely unattractive. But being congruent to a good positive personality, that's generally attractive, not just to women but to human beings in general. And one of the things that that I think integrating that kind of self-development and self-improvement angle to your activism, I think, is going to help things massively. Because think about it, man, we have to, by presenting the train of thought of a sustainable global system where human beings respect each other for who and what they are, then don't you think, and I mean, in a society where that is completely counter to how we've been taught, we really need to come across in a really non-violent and really non-assuming way, in a way that would actually benefit people and come across as non-judgmental, positive, not demeaning or dominating in any way. There's I mean, yes, it's understandable to a certain degree, because when you become an activist, there is that sort of angry phase where you go through, where you see the problems, and because you're bogged down by those problems already, you're already in a negative frame of mind. So you start, I don't know, like I started on the ridiculous conspiracy theories, and I said, yes, they're the problem, they're the cause, because they're in positions of high authority and wealth. So therefore, it's them, they're controlling us. So we need to get rid of them, And it's that kind of mentality that needs to be outgrown in the sense of promoting a positive worldview, because you need to recognise that those people, they're not essentially solely responsible. They've just continued the cycle. That's all they've done, because the system was in place before any of us were alive. So well, I mean, when I say that, I mean in terms of the modern era of the awful banksters and the economists and the billionaires, those billionaires were born into this system, into positions a lot of the time in inherited wealth and all that sort of stuff. So we've all been born into this system. But as humanity, as a whole, we existed before the system itself. But modern humans who are complaining about these kind of problems, they're modern problems of a modern system that is fighting modern evolution. But one of the things that I've been getting into a lot lately is the work of Eckhart Tolle and the teachings that he puts forward for what he calls presence, or being in the moment or in the now. And yes, there's a lot of material that he's done, but really, to break down a lot of Eckhart Tolle's work, it's about finding a way to enter into a state of a default state of positive thinking and the elimination of unnecessary or unhelpful thoughts. That's essentially what it is. And when you're communicating with someone on an information store, for example, presence is very, very, very helpful. Yeah, it helps a huge lot, because when you're present, you're able to listen to that person. And sometimes there comes up a tendency to try and correct them, because you're the one with the information and the DVDs and the flyers and the years of experience of talking about this, and they're a person off the street who has only just encountered this train of thought. Obviously, the things that they say aren't necessarily going to be completely in line with what you as the activist agree with and what you as the activist know. So, you've got to fight that urge to say, well, actually, that's not true. This is that's combative. That's counterproductive. Yes, there's a big inclination to do that towards the beginning, and I've done that a hell of a lot. Even sometimes in recent years, I've felt the reactionary part of me sort of like try to step in and say, oh no, you're wrong. No, I need to correct you. In a sense, that is what Eckhart Tolle would term as a pain body, and it's coming back to what I said earlier when about the debates and the fact that I started ranting at the television. I think that is a form of a pain body as well, and and the looking into the idea of presence itself, it's something that a lot of people who have a deep passion that they engage in a lot, that they actually experience for themselves, but they don't completely know it. Because, I can illustrate this easier by just giving other colloquial terms that already exist in our cultural lexicon that describe the same thing. Things like in the zone, or in a flow, or on a roll. Those are names for presence. When you're not overcome by unnecessary, nagging, unhelpful thoughts, and when you're just focused. It's about realizing that the now is the only time. Because this is going to sound. Some of this does sound woo-woo, but if you look into it, then you will sort of see the merit, because there is a lot to it, where if you're not having to fish through your mind for something to add to the situation, then that's an immature emotional need, the feeling to add to something. When you realise that the moment doesn't necessarily need to be added to, you can appreciate the moment for what it is, and especially if you're on an information stall and someone is, giving you information of, or even like their own opinion of what the cause is for our problems. They may be saying something you disagree with, but if you're present, then you won't feel the need to correct them. You will just take on board what they say, and and then you will say, well, I I really appreciate that that you can share that. I see why you think that. I see that it's important to you. I sense the need in you to have justice for this particular cause, because you've spoken about it with passion and meaning, and I really appreciate that you can share. Obviously you don't have to go full on with that kind of thing, but communicating in that way, it's much more helpful for your communications. And because I've done that, and I've had people say, I really enjoyed the chat. I've got to go, but it was a good chat. I enjoyed it. Because we respected each other's views. Even if the other person doesn't respect your views, you have. I think it's an NLP concept of going first, of leading. Of leading the interaction in terms of, you can present your side confidently, and the parameters are this and this, and we can expand upon them as need be. But this is what we're talking about. But you don't have to force it. That's the thing. So yeah, I think the idea of I think all activists need to be at least some kind of fan of self-development. They need to be some kind of fan. And but even if you don't want to go down the seemingly woo-woo Eckhart Tolle route, just look up body language, right? Because on a street stall, you're face to face with someone, and if you stand far enough back, you'll be able to keep their whole body within your general your focal point of your peripheral vision. So you can, if you look into body language, you can tell those sort of non-verbal giveaways of when a person's attention span is either wavering, or if they're about to raise some kind of objection, or if they're going back inside their head to fish out something to debunk what you're saying, or you can tell a lot. But because I can't remember the exact statistic, but the vast majority of human communication is non-verbal. And we centre a hell of a lot on the verbal while ignoring the non-verbal. But if we keep an eye on the non-verbal and train ourselves to be able to properly read non-verbal communication, then the people that we talk to will feel like we know exactly how to talk to them, and exactly how to phrase things in a way that, because if you pay attention to the person you're talking to, they will tell you by their behaviour will tell you how they would react. You just got to be tentative, not forcing information, but asking questions, exchanging things, making them realise, well, not making them realise, but enabling them to realise that you have a compassionate ear, you will hear them out, and you're not there to browbeat them or anything like that, because that would just make them shut down. You've got to communicate non-violently, and you've got to keep an eye on non-verbal communication. So that's the stuff that I've got for you for this particular podcast. Obviously it's been going on for a fair few whiles, so I might save the because there was an audio segment that I was going to put onto the end in case if I didn't have enough material to, because I thought there would be difficulty filling an hour, but adding this, it's about maybe nearly 40 minutes long, so it might add a bit too much onto there. But it's essentially what I did at the 2013 event, where I went round to interview some of the people. Some of them were the audience members, some of them were the actual speakers. But I thought I'd just add it just to gear up for for Z-Day, but I think that there isn't enough time on this one. If there is, I might add it on, but I don't know. I haven't added up all the time that I've been talking. But anyway, there's the podcast, ladies and gents. If you want to find out about more stuff that I do, just go to my YouTube channel, unless you're there already. YouTube.com/AAUTZM. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. You can find me in the Facebook groups for the Zeitgeist movement. Thank you everyone for taking the time to hear me jittering on and including loads of audio clips. But just the usual announcement. If you can download this on TalkShoe, you can find that there. But the usual plug is for the Zeitgeist Movement Defined. You can find how to get hold of that at thezeitgeistmovement.com/orientation. You can either buy a copy from, I think it's Amazon or Lulu.com. It's been a while since I've been to that particular page. Or you can download a PDF of it for free. This podcast was also brought to you by Cochlear, the device which enables you to hack into politicians' earpieces and get them to actually speak the truth and maybe hopefully spread some more information. We're also this podcast is also brought to you by our triad of sponsorship, namely Russell Brand, Caroline Lucas MP and Sir Patrick Stewart. They provide the support for this podcast, and in return they've agreed to at some point come on for at least 10 minutes to discuss science and sustainability when applied to society. So be sure to message, tweet, text, email, smoke signal, whatever you got to do to thank these individuals for sponsoring this show. The more we thank them, the more likely they are to actually come on to chat to us. And just to let you know, the next episode is going to be both a video and audio feature on Z-Day London 2015 at Conway Hall. It's going to be a very interesting day. I'm going to be interviewing some of the people there and some of the speakers. Obviously I'll be trying to get it on video, but understandably I think probably some people might not want to appear on video, so that will just be audio. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be I'm going to be giving myself 10 days to get it finished, so I hope I will. But anyway, there's that. So that's me, that's the podcast. You're listening to AAU TZM Podcasts. I'm Adam-Antium, you're the audience, and I'll leave you with the outro music. So take care, guys. Bye-bye.